So all the MLS action for this Saturday night have just finished about a half hour ago, as I just had to finish writing down the board for the last couple of games that is part of part one of this review. And while I'm not going to get to every single game tonight and talk about some of the madness we have seen tonight in terms of crazy things, and that we saw a couple of peak MLS moments, I at least can get to a couple of these peak MLS moments that happened in this crazy Saturday night around MLS action. But we begin with the first game that we're going to talk about is the matinee game between Orlando City versus the New York Red Bulls. And, you know, Orlando, they did win 3-1 in this game, but in many ways, this could have been a whole different game if the Red Bulls were able to take their chances. Now, in the first half, I thought the Red Bulls, they started out the better team, and they almost had a chance to get the opening goal in the 7th minute when Brian White actually went through on goal, but unfortunately he couldn't put it away to give the Red Bulls the opening goal. But as the game continued to go on, Orlando started to kind of grow into the game, and they would get the opening goal in the 24th minute when DK was able to score from Smith and Pereira, and yeah, that was not good defending whatsoever from the Red Bulls. Like, when you leave DK, who is one of the most dangerous goal scorers for this Orlando City side, that is probably going to be the resort where you're probably going to concede a goal, and therefore that was the case. Now, it almost was 2-0 in favor of Orlando City when Jensen was able to rob Chris Mueller on a one-on-one. Yeah, this was definitely not a good day for Chris Mueller, where he had a couple of chances to potentially score at least one goal, and it seemed like all those chances that he had was just pretty much wasted because he just didn't have his shooting boots in this game. Now, in the 32nd minute, Jensen again denied Urso, as Orlando, they could have been 3-0 up to that point. And in the second half, Urso did make an amends of his earlier miss by scoring from Chris Mueller. So at least if Mueller cannot finish, he still somehow find a way to be on the assist chart. And just as Orlando City looked like they were just going to run away with this one, the Red Bulls, they got one back in the 53rd minute, and this was kind of a gift that they got one back when Vela was able to score from Danny Royer. Now, on the league website, they said that Royer did not register this assist, but the reason why I put it on the board is because when you look at the play, and that I know maybe Danny Royer didn't know anything about the fact that the ball comes in and he kind of flick it with his 5 right into the perfect place where Valo is able to put it away. I just thought that, that is just too good to not be an assist that is credited to Daniel Royer. And, I haven't checked to see whether or not if they actually corrected and gave the assist to Danny Royer after this game is over. I only checked it when this game, of course, was finished. But I'm just going to give him the credit because clearly he deserved to get an assist for that. But all that kind of play happened because of the fact that there was a poor giveaway from Orlando at the back, and they allowed the Red Bulls to basically have a good chance to get one back, which they were able to take advantage. And that goal also kind of really swung the momentum, because I thought the Red Bulls were really going forward and trying to get the equalizer. And then there was a controversial moment in the 59th minute, one of many controversial moments we're going to get from this week's action, after Pereira looked like he brought down Royer in the box, but there was no penalty call whatsoever. I thought this one was a penalty because you can clearly see that Pereira tripped up Royer in the box, and that for some reason the referee decided to not call a penalty in terms of this sequence. Before, in the 69th minute, Orlando City kind of started to wake up, realizing that they can't just hold on to this 2-1 lead and expect the fact that the Red Bulls eventually is going to find a way to get an equalizer. And they had a chance to put the game away in the 69th minute when Benji Michel, of course, fluffed his lines after he was wide open in the box. This was one of many chances that Orlando City was going to continue to get for the rest of the game. But then Galese in the 80th minute had to make a big save to deny Jakowski before Velet had a big chance to score on the follow-up, but unfortunately he puts that one wide. Before Orlando eventually did put the game away in the 95th minute when Antonio Carlos, who just was subbed on a couple of minutes ago, score from Michel and Nani. Originally, this goal was allowed, but after a couple of minutes of VAR check, they said that this goal, of course, was good, and there was no offside that was first judged on the attacking play in this sequence. And yeah, that, of course, is the final score of this game, as Orlando able to win 3-1 in this one. Shots in this one, 8 shots compared to 11 that the Red Bulls had, 5 shots on goal compared to 3 that the Red Bulls had, 2 shots off target compared to 6 that the Red Bulls had, 1 shot that was blocked compared to 2 that the Red Bulls had. And possession-wise, 54% possession compared to 46% possession, as Orlando City now extend their club record of 9-game unbeaten. And for the Red Bulls, yeah, you know, they're going to be frustrated, the fact that they didn't get anything out of this game, because I don't think they played bad in this one. But this was just kind of an example of them being the underdogs coming into this game. And when you're the underdogs and you're playing against a tougher team and you're given the opportunity to basically put the ball into the back of the net, you got to put those chances away. And because they didn't do it, that's why they end up on the losing side of this game. But moving on, in terms of the next match, it happened again, didn't it? So, you know how I said this week in the preview, or shall I say go back to last week in the preview, where I said that the game between FC Cincinnati versus NYCFC, that game had 0-0 written all over it, and look what happened after that game. It finished 4-0 in favor of NYCFC. And then this week in the preview, I was kind of tempted to not say that this game between DC versus Atlanta has 0-0 written all over it, but I kind of also said it the same thing. And look what happened after this game. Yep, that's right. Atlanta won 4-0, and we saw the exact same thing that happened last week. Although, the other thing that this game proved me wrong is that I also kind of said in the preview where I don't expect there's going to be a lot of crazy action happening in this game. Not only the fact that we saw some crazy action happening in this game, but we saw something that we probably have never seen in all my time watching MLS game, and an instant that is no wonder why DC United fans want Ben Olsen to get out of this club as soon as possible. Now, in the first half, and just like how last week I said that this game, of course, had written 0-0 all over it, and it took a matter of seconds, the fact that this game wasn't going to finish 0-0. Well, in this one, it was kind of something similar, except it took 4 minutes before Orlando was able to score early in this game when John Gallagher would score from Bello and Hyman. Gallagher would have a career day with the way that he was able to end up with a brace in this game. Before, Robinson had a chance to score his first MLS goal, but unfortunately he just missed it high. And early on, it looked like Atlanta was all over DC United in this game. Adam John had a chance to make it 2-0 in favor of Atlanta, but unfortunately he could not score with a free header from 12 yards out. Now, eventually DC did started to try to get back into this game, and they had a couple of half chances to potentially tie it up, but eventually Atlanta would score the second goal, and it came in the 40th minute when Brooks Lennon was able to whack a beautiful shot for about 30 yards out. And not only the fact that this is going to be goal of the week with a question mark, but this is probably going to be the goal of the week, knowing the fact that it seemed like Atlanta fans, they're going to once again stuff the vote and say that this is definitely going to be the goal of the week. And actually, you know how I said that he, of course, whacked this one for about 30 yards out? This wasn't actually the case. He actually whacked this one more like about 15 yards out, but with the way that he hits that, it just looked like it was an absolute banger, the way that Brooks Lennon was going to hit that. He hits that, and that there's no doubt that, again, not only this is going to be goal of the week with a question mark, but knowing Atlanta loves to stuff the ballot for goal of the week, this is most likely going to be the goal of the week. Now, in the second half, this is where things kind of gone a little bit crazy, and cue the Benny Hill kind of theme music, because Ben Olsen actually decided to sub in Russell Canals in this game at halftime, and he actually played about 2 minutes before he decided to take him out and trying to sub in Paredes in there. Now, obviously, at first, you're probably thinking this isn't kind of normal, the fact that a coach would just sub his player out just after 2 minutes, especially Canals didn't even suffer an injury. But what's more crazy about this instant is that there was then a widespread confusion between the referee and the coaches for both teams in terms of the fact that they were trying to figure out, did Russell Canals actually sub into this game, and that he originally actually was not on the team sheet for DC United, and that there was definitely a lot of questions saying that this is an illegal substitution by DC United. And after over 10 minutes of discussion, and at one point the referee had to even look at his iPhone to check the team sheet for both of these teams, they of course deemed that Canals was indeed eligible to play in this game. But then what's also kind of got a little bit interesting is that I was wondering that, since if Atlanta decided, or not Atlanta, but DC decided to sub an ineligible player, and that they of course also feel an ineligible player in this game, does that mean that they of course are going to have to forfeit this game? Because according to the FIFA law, if you decide to feel an ineligible player, then you are going to be automatically forfeit a game. And this is something that we have actually seen it before. I remember most famously Real Madrid did this once in a Copa del Rey game, where they basically put an ineligible player in the game, and later the Spanish FA found out the fact that Real Madrid decided to put an ineligible player in one of their game in the Copa del Rey, and therefore Real Madrid was disqualified in this tournament. But apparently the law of the game also said that despite the fact that it's clear that when you feel an ineligible player and that you are automatically have to forfeit your game, it also said that it depends on what the league and how the league want to interpret that. And I've been waiting to see how MLS of course are going to talk about this and how they're going to interpret this. But apparently it seemed like their rules is, well, you feel an ineligible player, which that's something you shouldn't do, but we're just going to let that ineligible player basically get out of this team, but we're going to allow you to make the substitution that you of course would make. And in other words, in this instant, the referee decided that Canals of course was kicked out of the game, but DC was able to bring Paredes into the game, which means that they actually didn't have a man sent off in this. I mean, yeah, it was very confusing situation, and again, it took almost 10 minutes for them to of course figure that out, which in a game time, that's pretty much 9% of the game, the fact that they just focus on that kind of instant. But either way, when the game eventually did proceed, I mean, in some way I feel like it was better for DC to just forfeit at that point, because for the rest of the way, Atlanta pretty much dominate the game, and that they would get that third goal in the 64th minute when Gallagher would score his brace from Hyman and John, before Adam John would get on the score sheet in the 70th minute and make it 4-0 when he scored from Lennon and Escobar. And to add the cherry on top in terms of misery for DC United, they saw a red card once again in this one, when Brian of course was sent off for a denial of goal score opportunity. And yeah, I mean, that pretty much just conclude a very miserable day for DC United. And the shots in this one, 8 shots compared to 12 that Atlanta has. No shots on goal compared to 4 that Atlanta has. 5 shots off target compared to 6 that Atlanta has. 3 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that Atlanta has. Both teams have equal amount of possession, but in many ways, for DC United, in some way I kind of feel bad for their fans. And, their fans, they've been wanted to ban Olsen out for a couple of years now, but I kind of feel like this is really the time where they have every right to yell at their front office. Hell, they have every right to even go into their front office and just protest outside of it and demand Ban Olsen to be fired for this team, because it's not just the fact that Ban Olsen haven't done a good job with this team with just this 13-game winless run they have, but when you have a situation where you messed up on your team sheet and you basically illegal substitute a guy that is not even on your team sheet, yeah, that's a fireable offense pretty much in every single league. And that I gotta say, it's going to be a matter of time before Olsen is going to be the next coach that is going to be end up in the chopping block. And I won't be surprised we could get a announcement as early as tomorrow, the fact that Ben Olsen is going to be no longer the head coach of DC United, because of how bad that this team has. I mean, I don't remember a DC United team this bad probably since back in 2013 when they of course won the wooden spoon, but I think this has been even worse with the way that this just doesn't seem like a team that is not only not going to make the playoffs, but is on point of even looking worse than what the situation that the San Jose Earthquakes are in. And I thought the Quakes were in a bad situation when they are getting regularly blown out. It's nothing compared to what DC United had to suffer of just not only seeing bad kind of football, but seeing just a coach being this incompetent that he doesn't even know how to properly substitute players, that is, whether he's on the team sheet or not. But that being said, after that kind of long discussion, let's move on into the next game, as I kind of spent a lot of time talking about this, to talk about the game between New England versus Nashville. And when I saw the team sheet in both of these teams, and the good news is neither of these coaches actually make a mistake in terms of their team sheet and actually illegally substitute a player. But when I saw the team sheet between both of these teams, and specifically for Nashville, I knew that this is either going to be a game where it's going to finish 0-0, or the fact that New England is probably going to win this. Because when I saw what the team that Gary Smith was going to field, it was pretty clear that he was playing for a 0-0 draw, since he basically decided to put just 11 guys in the starting 11. And in some way, I should have just renamed Nashville Bus Company, because of the way that they looked like they just pretty much parked the bus throughout the entire game. Now, in the first half, 8 minutes in, Willis, of course, was able to tip Tajon Buchanan shot high over the post. I thought Tajon Buchanan in this game was very adventurous, and that he definitely looked like he had a lot of confidence in terms of scoring a goal, and that in some way he was very unlucky, the fact that he didn't get a goal despite how adventurous that he was in this game. And I also wrote that Nashville looked like they were just going to bunker and play to a 0-0 draw, and that I actually should have wrote that at the top of this box right here when I reviewed this game, because it was pretty clear that they are just going to do that. Now, in the second half, Willis was able to rob Gustavo Bo, who I thought he should have scored from 12 yards out, before Turner did prevent an own goal after one of his defenders deflected, but Turner made an incredible save to not only push that one out, but then had to readjust himself to just kind of put that one out of play, because as he originally was making the save, the ball was still bouncing near the line, and that he kind of had to make a secondary save to push that one out. Then Willis was back to his superior goalkeeping as once again he was able to rob Buchanan from point blank range, and that as much as New England was just trying to push forward to try to get the opener in this game, Nashville was able to hold on, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that once again their defense was rock solid, and that Joe Willis was once again on his game, and also kind of partially because they were time wasting pretty much starting in the first half. Like the amount of time that Nashville kind of time wastes, especially in the last 20 minutes, where there was definitely a couple of Nashville players that just kind of went down with fake injury to try to waste as much time as possible. You knew what they were going to do, and that ultimately they were going to try to hold on to the 0-0 draw. And the stat sheet pretty much also shows you how Nashville didn't even attempt to try to play this game, as they only had 3 shots in this game compared to 17 that New England has, 5 shots on goal compared to 1 that Nashville has, 5 shots off target compared to 2 that Nashville has, 7 shots out was blocked compared to none that Nashville has, and possession-wise, 66% possession compared to 34% possession that Nashville has. And that for New England, this absolutely felt like a loss for them. I mean, when you're basically playing a Nashville team that is not even playing a reserve team, like they're playing a taxi squad kind of team against you, and that all they do is just kind of park the bus to try to get a 0-0 draw. And I know it's always going to be tough to try to break down a team that just put 11 men behind the box for the entire game, but you would think that with New England, with the way that they are kind of started to figure out in terms of the final third and started to able to put the ball in the back of net, that they can at least put one in the back of net in this game against Nashville. And unfortunately they didn't do that, and that their struggle at home continues with the way that they still have only won one game at home, despite the fact that they've played like 8 or 9 home games so far this season. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Montreal and the Chicago Fire, and for a while it looked like this was a game where it kind of just typically showed the thing that I always say about the Chicago Fire, which is they just cannot have a winning streak, and they just cannot be consistent in this game. And I could kind of also say that once again they just somehow, whenever they are going on a good run, and you would think that they of course have turned a corner, this of course is the game that happened, and that they weren't able to get a victory out of this. And in some way they kind of got a little bit lucky, the fact that they were able to walk away with a 2-2 draw in this game. Now, they did score the opening goal in the 14th minute when Beric was able to score from Mihailovic, but in many ways, it was an absolute gift from Clement Diop, who I might as well just also put him on the assist chart too, because he basically assists this right to Mihailovic, where Mihailovic was able to find Beric, and you know how with Beric being just so red hot right now in the last couple of games, that there's just no way he's going to miss that opportunity. And indeed, that is the case, as he's scored in this point, and also make it now 5 goals that he have scored or in 5 straight games. Now, just 7 minutes later, Montreal would get the equalizer. And while I talk about how Clement Diop make a goalkeeping howler, fortunately Bobby Shuttleworth was not the only one, or Diop wasn't the only one that of course made a goalkeeping howler, and it was this. And at around this point, it was Bobby Shuttleworth's turn to make a goalkeeping howler, because while the original shot that he saved was a decent one, he didn't really pair that shot out enough to allow a juicy rebound bounce right to Lapinlainen, who easily just slots that one home to tie the game up at 1 apiece. Although he did kind of redeem himself just 7 minutes later when he was able to deny Ruti from the front post, and we had to halftime 1-1 between both of these teams. Now, in the second half, I thought Chicago looked like they were the better team, and that they were potentially going to get the lead back, but instead, it was Montreal that was able to get their first lead of the game when Ruti was able to score from Giats to give them a 2-1 lead, and that in some way it was kind of a little bit of against the run of plays with the way that Chicago looked like they were the one that was going to get the lead back. But they did tie the game up just 6 minutes later when Francesco Calvo was able to score his first goal this season from Madron to tie the game up at 2 apiece. And I was kind of surprised when the announcer said that was actually his first goal, considering the fact that he had a lot of chances throughout this season. But that also being said, most of those chances he had, and even when he did, of course, score those goals, they were, of course, disallowed by VAR, and there was no doubt that this goal that he scored was not going to be disallowed from VAR. And I think Francesco Calvo must be the most relief, man, for the fact that, for once, his goal is actually going to count, and that VAR is not going to overrule that. Now, in the 83rd minute, Shuttleworth was able to rob Lassi Laipanainen for a chance for Montreal to retake that lead. And, I thought when Calvo, of course, scored that goal to tie the game up for Chicago, maybe I thought that Chicago was going to have that momentum to push for the third goal, but instead it looked like Montreal was the one that was looking the more threatening side, but thanks to the fact that Shuttleworth was able to make a couple of key stops, and that Chicago was able to just hold on enough where Montreal just kind of ran out of time in terms of finding the go-ahead goal. This game, of course, ends on its even between both of these teams. And the shots in this one, 12 shots compared to 11 that Chicago has, 8 shots on goal compared to 3 that Chicago has, 2 shots off target compared to 5 that the Fire has, 2 shots out of the ball compared to 3 that the Fire has, and possession-wise, 45% possession compared to 55% possession. And either way, I think coming out of this game, neither of these coaches are going to be happy with this result. I mean, I guess maybe the only happy resort might be Montreal, the fact that at least for once they didn't actually had a sending off in this game for their past 5 games. 4 of those times they had to finish a game with 10 men or at least have 1 red card in their game. But besides that, I don't think either of these head coaches are going to be happy, because for Thierry Henry, their winless run continues, and for Chicago, it's frustrating the fact that this was a big opportunity to make it 3 in a row and a chance to really get themselves up in the Eastern Conference, and they couldn't do it in this game against a very weak Montreal team. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is the game of the week, which ended in favor of Toronto, and this game kind of looks something similar to what happened in the last game of the week when Toronto played against Columbus, which is TFC. They went down in the first half, and in the second half, whatever Greg Vanney said to this team at halftime, it really fired up this team, and they were able to score a couple of goals to come back from an early deficit. But that being said, they went down very quickly this time, unlike last week where they went down right on the stroke of halftime. This time they went down 4 minutes in when Santos was able to score to give the Union a 1-0 lead. Before they had a chance to quickly equalize, but Andre Blake was able to deny Mavinga on the front post. But again, Toronto was really started to search for the equalizer. But then on the other end, in the 29th minute, Westberg was able to rout Jamer Montero after he was able to tip that one onto the post. I mean, that was an incredible save from Clinton Westberg, with the way that Montero looked like he hit that banger perfectly, but Westberg just full stretch able to put that one off the post, and then kind of got a little bit lucky, the fact that the post kind of helped him in that incredible save that he has made. Now, in the second half, as I said, Greg Vanney, clearly he fired up this team heading into the second half, because once again, Toronto, they looked like they were hungry to try to get the equalizer, and this time they did get the equalizer, and it came in the 57th minute when Ayo Akinola scored from Tony Gallagher to give Toronto the equalizer and the game tie at 1 apiece, before Piatti in the 59th minute just hit it a little bit high, and that it was pretty clear that Toronto looked like they were in complete control. And that I kind of don't understand why in the second half, where the Union started to really kind of back off, and that Jim Curtin actually made some very questionable substitution choice, where he brought out a lot of his attacker and start bringing some of his midfielder and defense. I mean, I understand that you're on the road and you want to at least get a point out of this, but it's not like the Union is not a good team whatsoever. This is a battle between two of the best team in the Eastern Conference. You would think that the Union would still think about going for it and not just sit back and hope that they can, of course, salvage a point out of this game. But instead, that's what they exactly do, and Toronto continue to pile on the pressure. In the 70th minute, Piatti had another chance to get the go-ahead goal for Toronto after he missed a point-blank effort. Before they did get the go-ahead goal, and for the second week in a row, that go-ahead goal was scored by Alejandro Pozuelo, as this time he was able to score from his good buddy Pablo Piatti to give Toronto a 2-1 lead. And then after, when Toronto was able to go up for the first time, this is when the Union started to woke up, and that, I was thinking, where was this urgency for the entire second half? Like, why is now all of a sudden they started to be a little bit urgent to trying to get an equalizer and get a point out of this game, and that TFC was really starting to just hold on and nurse to get this 2-1 victory. Bedoya had a chance in the 91st minute to basically head it in for Philly to get an equalizer, but unfortunately he headed straight into Kristen Westberg. And yeah, that of course was really the final action, as Toronto was able to hold on for a 2-1 win. Shots in this game, 13 shots compared to 9 that the Union has, 3 shots on goal compared to 5 that the Union has, 7 shots off target compared to 3 that the Union has, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that the Union has, and possession-wise, 58% possession compared to 42% possession. And I believe with this win, Toronto actually are now at the top of the Eastern Conference, and actually just to kind of double check to make sure if that is actually correct, and that I know Columbus, of course, they drew their game against FC Dallas, and of course that game I will review in part number 2 of the review for this weekend's action. But let me just double check to make sure they are at top. Well, actually they're not at top of the Eastern Conference, but they're actually tied with Columbus in terms of having the exact same record and the exact same amount of points total in the top of the Eastern Conference. But yeah, this Toronto team have really looked dangerous in the last couple of weeks, whereas for the Union, yeah, they're going to be very disappointed the fact that they weren't able to win this game. And these are kind of the games where, this season, as good as the Union has been, they already dropped two big resort against teams like Toronto and Columbus this season on the road. And if you're going to be a team that are going to be dropping these resort, well, that means you're probably not going to have home field advantage when you, of course, play them in the playoffs. And that if you want to be a legitimate MLS Cup contender, you, of course, got to win these resort if you're expected to be an MLS Cup contender, because most likely both of these teams are going to meet again each other in the playoffs. And I won't mind if that is going to be the case, because this game really felt like this was kind of a playoff type of game, with both teams just being very good coming into this one. But now moving on into the final game of this review for part number 1 is Miami and NYCFC. And boy, this was a relatively entertaining game, especially in the first half, where it seemed like defense was completely optional in the first half, as we saw all 5 goals happen in the first half. And the goal scoring started quickly in the 4th minute when Mitrita, for the second week in a row, was able to score an early goal from Alexander Ring to give NYCFC a 1-0 lead. Before, Higuain thought that he had his first MLS goal, only for Sean Johnson to make a big save to deny him. But after that, I thought Miami really started to take control of this game, and it was a matter of time before Miami was going to tie the game up, which they did exactly that in the 27th minute when Lewis Morgan was able to score from Ulloa and Matuidi to tie the game up at 1 apiece. And at that moment, I thought, well, Miami certainly has the momentum now. The fact that they got that equalizer and they have been by far the better team. But instead, that just kind of woke up NYCFC, and that Robles did had to rob Keaton Parks, who was basically one-on-one with the goalkeeper, and that, for Keaton Parks, he would definitely want to have that one back with the way how big of a chance that he wasted during that moment. But the good news for him and his team is that eventually they did retake the lead in the 34th minute when Tinnerholm were able to score from Alex Ring to make it 2-1 in favor of NYCFC, only for Miami to quickly respond just 4 minutes later. And this time, again, it's Lewis Morgan with his second goal of the night, as he scored from Gonzalo Higuain. So while Higuain didn't get a goal in this game that, of course, marked his first ever MLS goal, he did get his first ever MLS assist in this one. Now, in the 43rd minute, NYCFC retake the lead, and it was Mitrita that was able to retake the lead from NYCFC. But I thought this was really bad defending from Inter Miami, and that, man, this Miami defense, I don't know what's going on in these last couple of games, where this is now their 3rd straight games where they have conceded more than 2 goals in a game, after pretty much for their entire inaugural season until just a couple of games ago, where they didn't even concede more than 2 goals in a game. And that something is definitely wrong with that defense, with the way that they're just leaking goals left and right like that. Now, in the second half, Higuain did have a chance to finally get his debut goal from 3 yards out, but somehow, in some way, that one, of course, was pushed wide. And that if you're an Inter Miami fan and saw that happening, yeah, you better hope that this is not going to be a continued trend, because that kind of moment looks something similar to what happened to Chicharito when he was with the Galaxy, where he was basically bungling a lot of good opportunity. And by the way, tomorrow when I do part 2 of the review, we'll get to Chicharito in terms of some of the bad miss that he also had in that game against the Quakes in the Cali Clasico. But yeah, for Inter Miami fans, they hope their $7 million man is not going to continue to do something like that, because I think if Gonzalo Higuain was actually confident, and that if this was him a couple of years ago, 100% he is going to bury that one into the back of net, and that it would have been free at that point. Now, that being said, Miami was once again knocking on the door to potentially get that 3rd goal. Though NYCFC in the 78th minute had a chance to make it 4-2 when Mackay Steven actually went one-on-one with the goalkeeper, but this time Robles was able to deny him and keep this one at 3-2. Before, it looked like it was 3-3 in favor of Inter Miami when Carranza was able to score from Higuain, but they go to VAR to see whether or not if there was an offside on the attacking sequence, and the answer is yes. And as much as I know Miami fans have been angry the fact that VAR has been unfair to them and that they've been kind of hard done with it, and it also seemed like Mother Nature was kind of feeling the same way, because as soon as this call was made, well, actually doing this VAR call, the heavens basically opened up where it was a monsoon that happened during that play. But as soon as they make the decision, yeah, it was just raining cats and dogs, and something tells me that it seemed like it's pretty clear that Inter Miami is just being cursed with VAR, not just with the way that VAR has decision gone against them, but it seemed like Mother Nature even agrees the fact that they've been just absolutely cursed with the VAR decision that's been seems to always go against them in these games. Now, that being said, that was really the last chance that Inter Miami has, as this game eventually would end 3-2 in favor of NYCFC. And the shots in this game, 13 shots compared to 9 that NYCFC had. Both teams had 5 shots on goal, 5 shots off target compared to 3 that NYCFC had. 3 shots that was blocked compared to NYCFC, 1 that NYCFC had. And possession-wise, 60% possession compared to 40% possession that NYCFC had. And that, for Miami, yeah, they got to figure out this defense for the next couple of games, because as much as I want to go in to talk about how they need to do better in terms of finishing, their defense in the last couple of games has just been very leaky, and you cannot win a lot of games in this league if you have a leaky defense, even if you have an attack that is struggling right now. So yeah, hopefully they can of course figure it out in these next couple of games, because the more that they're going to continue to lose these games, the more that their playoff hope that they have very slim chance heading into this inaugural year is started to disappear. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the review of this week's action, or at least part number 1 of the review for this week's action. Stay tuned for part number 2 tomorrow once I finish reviewing the RSL versus LAFC game is going to be over. But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.